Hi there, I'm Alex from the Southern Ukulele Store. Last week I made a video on concert ukuleles under £200. Really popular. Lots of you have really liked that video and asked me when the tenor version of that video will be available. The answer to that is probably 2-3 weeks. I'm just waiting for a couple of ukes to come into stock that I would feel silly making the video without featuring them. So what I thought I'd do instead this week is pull back a bit and not do a video that's 35 minutes long with lots and lots of different instruments to showcase. Instead, I'm going to show you 4 instruments that we have in the shop right now that I really dig. Instruments I like, instruments that if I was in the market for a ukulele at those price points and sizes that I wouldn't hesitate to choose. And the key thing here is I've not kind of just gone for the most expensive instruments in the shop, which is, you know, fantasy land. I'm looking at instruments that realistically punch a bit above their weight for the price. So we're going to look at a Millar, we're going to look at an Ohana, we're going to look at an Uma. Thanks Uma for sending me the sign. And then finally we're going to look at an Uluru. So strap in, and whether you're a soprano, concert, tenor or baritone person, there should be and will be something for you. Okay folks, the first ukulele we're going to look at today is a Millar. And this Millar model, in fact, is probably the model that put Millar on the map here in the UK/Europe/North America. Before Matt, my friend at World of Ukes, sent one of these ukuleles to Got a Ukulele for review, very few people, myself included, had ever heard of them. But this ukulele punches so far above its weight for what it is. This is the SP210L. This has a spruce top, acacia back and sides, all solid, with a satin finish, a rosewood fingerboard and bridge, with a 35mm nut, not Goto, I think Dujung, or an unbranded planetary tuner. I noticed with Millar videos they have a massive following out in Taiwan where they are made, and they're very clearly a brand that Taiwanese people are very, very proud of. And quite often when I make videos on the Millars, I've noticed that I get corrected on very, very small mistakes or kind of languageisms. I just made up a word. Cool. I get corrected because of these tiny bits of information that just don't translate from the east to the west very well. But my understanding of this ukulele is that it's a long neck soprano, all solid wood, spruce and acacia, giving it a very punchy, very confident sound, but with some depth and some character that you don't normally get with the smaller ukuleles. Normally a smaller ukulele is best strummed and played percussively, in my experience, but this ukulele would actually make a very good finger picking instrument for somebody that wanted to play high G, low G, campanella, any kind of style you wanted. This would be a suitable instrument in the smaller size range. You have this gorgeous acacia faceplate with the Millar logo, and then you have the strips of maple, ebony and rosewood weaved into a rope style binding all the way across the body and then on the sound hole rosette. A traditional slot bridge, and the satin finish gives it a completely unique lived in feel. Some satin finishes can feel very sterile, but there's something about this where it looks like it's been done by somebody taking their time, which is very rare an instrument at this price. I'll put the link for this instrument in the description if you want to check it out further, but for now let's give the Millar SP210L a play and see what you think. I just love the dynamic range of this ukulele. I never feel like I'm playing a soprano. Okay, next up today we're going to take a look at Ohana. Ohana have, for the last decade or so, been really the front runners in making affordable vintage reproductions of older instruments. So at that kind of £500 price point you have Kawaya, but less than £500, Ohana have really tapped into the history of the ukulele and made some of the best instruments that are focused on the early Martins and the early Gibsons, and looking at the mainland US ukulele boom and instruments that came with that, as opposed to the Hawaiian market. And anyone who looks back at history will know that Martin did dabble with koa in the late 1920s, early 30s, and produced some very, very high-end Style 3 models made of koa. And this is a copy of that in a concert size. This is the Ohana CK390. And you just have to look at it to see why I would choose this as one of my favourite ukes in the shop right now. It's all solid Hawaiian koa, top, back and sides. And regardless of the light you put it in, it's got this really nice straight grain with some kind of defying textures that you just don't notice at first glance, but at a deeper nudge in their general direction, you start noticing a kind of holographic pattern. It's a satin finish, which Ohana do really, really well. In my opinion, I personally prefer the satin Ohanas because they look and feel more like the old instruments that they're trying to replicate. And you have some kind of bling on this instrument as well as you would with the original Style 3 ukulele. So you have that maple strip there with a 5-ply black, white, black plastic binding that's replicated with maple on the side here on the front side, and then you have back binding doing the same thing as well. The thing that draws me to these instruments is the strip. You don't see enough cosmetic detail on the fingerboard, so this has the binding going all the way up the fingerboard with the twin dots either side, which is fantastic if you're looking down at the instrument on a stage or trying to play with other people and you're kind of a bit jumpy. Having those side dots along with the dots on the side of the fingerboard make for a more cohesive sense of urgency when you're playing. You have a koa faceplate with the Ohana logo, and then traditional friction tuners made by Goto to set the whole thing off. You have a 35mm nut width and a bone nut and saddle. And this is on the more expensive side of the Ohana bracket. I think this is probably kind of up there with the top tier instruments, but overlaps really nicely with something like a Kawaya KTS4, or I should say a KTC1, like the mahogany concert. And it would be a real hard decision for myself to make if I was in the market for a concert between this or something like the Kawaya. You could also throw Millar into the mix as well, but there are lots of people making very, very nice instruments of £500 these days, but not that many people going for that vintage style instrument and doing it as well as Ohana. So let's give the CK390 a play and see what you think. Okay, next up today we have a new ukulele we've not featured or talked about before at SUS, but a brand that we've been looking at for a couple of years and finally have the option to stock here in the UK. This is the Classic-ST. So when I opened the box to this ukulele, I actually had a customer in the shop who for a split second thought that I was unboxing a Kamaka, and I can actually see why they would think that, because despite the gloss finish making it look, different to somebody who looks at these things a lot, the wood grain on this is, it shouldn't be this good for this price. I mean that. I put this on the wall at the moment against other ukuleles that are very good at this money, things like the Snail, the S20, things like the Millars, the TA260s, things like the Ohana TK2. Like, there's lots of different ukuleles made of acacia right now, but actually this one looks more like Hawaiian koa. Maybe it's the way they stain it, but the instrument kind of, to the naked eye on first glance, it can fool you into thinking this instrument is 6-7 times the price it is, and it's great. This is the all solid acacia tenor. I like that the Uma Classic series have slightly bigger dimensions. They're not quite a super tenor, but they look chunky, they feel chunky, they have a slightly deeper, richer tone than you would maybe expect them to have. You have a 35mm nut width, bone nut and saddle, but with an engineered fingerboard. So an engineered wood, that's lots and lots of pieces of wood glued together and then cut to make a sheet. So the wood is less affected by climate, but still ever so slightly affected by climate. It's not made of plastic, it is made of wood. It's just a bit more nondescript and processed. It's a little bit like the difference between a chicken breast and a chicken nugget. It's still food. And I get asked all the time about fingerboard materials and what's the best to go for. And I'm very, very on the fence about it, because a rosewood fingerboard naturally absorbs a lot of frequencies. So what you get is a warmer sound naturally on the kind of your ear just listening to an instrument. It would be a negligible difference, but you would hear it if you were a technical player. An ebony fingerboard is much more reflective. It's harder wood, so when you fret that instrument, it's giving you a more kind of natural reflection. Then you have maple and lots of other kind of random woods like oven coal. But then on something like this with a technical wood, they're all somewhere in the middle of a rosewood and ebony board. They actually reflect ebony probably the most. What I'm trying to say is, don't be put off an instrument because part of the instrument is engineered wood, because as time progresses, that's going to be more and more common, and it does make this instrument a lot more affordable, and it doesn't hamper my enjoyment of it, and I hope it wouldn't hamper yours. There's no binding to speak of on this instrument, but you do get some really nice sapwood on some of them. We've had 3 in stock, 2 of them have had this sapwood. So email us and ask for pictures of our current stock if you are at all concerned or have a preference. Yeah, Uma Classic-ST, one of the more surprising and exciting tenor ukuleles to arrive in recent months. Let's give it a play and see what you think. Okay, last up today we're going to take a look at the Uluru Ohana Baritone. So this baritone series was developed by us and Matt at World of Ukes to fill a big gap in the market, because this time last year all baritone ukuleles seemingly vanished off the earth for 6 months because factories shut down, and when they reopened there was a sense of urgency to make the more popular models. The baritone, which has always been kind of just on that second rung of popularity for the ukulele, was just cast aside for a while. And we found it impossible to find baritones anyway at the price point that this Uluru sits. You have Kala, Ohana, Lanakai, Uma. You have lots of brands making baritones between that £100 and £400 price point. And then there's a massive gap until you get to the high end. You get to the Kamakas, the Ukuleles, and in fact, they are probably the only two high-end brands I could speak of that make baritones. So we've been on a hunt for baritone ukuleles for a couple of years, and so had Matt separately, just trying to find baritones around that kind of £600 to £1,000 price point. Something professional, but for people that just don't have endless deep pockets. And we went to Uluru, and they made us this. This is one of two, the Ohana spruce and ovencoal model. So it's solid Engelmann spruce with a solid ovencoal back and sides. Tonally, ovencoal is like walnut. It's not unlike ebony. It has a good reflective nature to it. So what you get here is a sparkly, jangly baritone sound. And the acacia version of this ukulele, which we often stock as well, has a more natural, a mellow island sound. But for those of you that have come from guitar, or perhaps want your ukulele to play the deeper frequencies but stand out in the mix with a band, or perhaps you're a fingerstyle player and you just like sustain. And you know, I chose this ukulele today because if you're after a baritone and you have a high-end budget, then you're looking at maybe a Ukulele Sus baritone, or a Pono Pro Classic, or a Kamaka, and then you look at these, there is a very, very good chance that this will actually tick the boxes. The other thing to note is that the fingerboard has maple binding, so you can see the fret dots more easily. And the maple binding on these in general is just gorgeous. It's really quilted all the way around. They've used lovely, lovely maple. And then they've done an ovencoal sound hole rosette as well, just so it doesn't look kind of too plain. You have an ebony fingerboard and bridge with a tie-on bridge and a 35mm nut width, so a slightly narrower nut width like a Pono. You have closed back tuners with the snakewood, perhaps acacia. Snakewood is a variant of acacia. Buttons, and you have the Uluru faceplate there with ovencoal as well. Yeah, we also supply a hard case with these, so if you're somebody looking for that forever baritone, but you don't necessarily want to kind of go double or nothing on something made in Hawaii, then this is a fantastic option. And I'm going to give it a play for you now and see what you think.